The hangar on the fringes of Vega Nexus was a tomb of shadows and whispered secrets, its cavernous belly swallowing the echoes of distant machinery. The air tasted of burnt metal and ionized fuel, clinging to the back of Ethan Carter's throat as he stepped inside. Before him, the Stormbringer loomed, a battle-scarred combat cruiser, its hull a tapestry of plasma burns and patched breaches. The ship was a relic of war, sold off in a back-alley auction to the highest bidder. Him? Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his disheveled hair. He'd spent his last credits on this gamble, lured by the promise of firepower and freedom. But now, standing before the vessel, doubt slithered into his gut. The Stormbringer wasn't just a ship, it was a ghost with teeth. The boarding ramp groaned under his weight as he stepped inside. Emergency lights flickered, painting the narrow corridors in jagged stripes of crimson. His boots thudded against the grated floor, the sound swallowed by the ship's hollow belly. Then, movement. A figure detached from the shadows, fluid as smoke. Ethan's pulse spiked. She stepped into the dim light, and the world narrowed to her. Seren. Her azure skin gleamed like polished cobalt under the ship's sickly glow, every muscle taut beneath its surface. She was built for combat, lean but powerful, her frame honed by years of survival. A fitted black bodysuit clung to her like a second skin, the fabric reinforced at the joints with armored plating. The deep V of the collar revealed a collarbone dusted with faint scars. Her face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, a blade-straight nose, and lips that curled with quiet lethality. Silver eyes, bright as quicksilver, locked onto him with predatory focus. Dark hair, black as the void between stars, tumbled in loose waves over one shoulder, the ends brushing the curve of her breast. Ethan's throat went dry. She didn't just stand there, she owned the space around her, one hand resting on the plasma pistol at her hip. The other held a data pad, its screen casting a sickly green glow over her knuckles. "You're trespassing," she said. Her voice was velvet over steel. Ethan forced himself to breathe. "Not trespassing. I own this ship." Her fingers twitched toward her weapon. "Do you?" He fumbled for the holochip in his pocket, thrusting it toward her. The transaction record shimmered in the air between them, his name, the auction stamp, the Stormbringer's registry. Seren's gaze flicked over it. Then she laughed, a sound like shattered glass. "You bought a corpse." Ethan stiffened. "What?" She stepped closer, invading his space. The scent of ozone and something faintly floral, jasmine, maybe, wrapped around him. This ship was never cleared for sale. It's got a killswitch in its core, a tracker in its NAV system, and enough enemies to turn your life into a shooting gallery. Her eyes burned into his. "You paid for a coffin, owner." A klaxon blared to life overhead. Seren's head snapped toward the cockpit, her body coiled like a spring. "They're here." "Who's?" "Bounty hunters." She was already moving, her boots silent against the metal. "If you want to live, get to the helm." "Now." Ethan hesitated, then sprinted after her. The ship thrummed beneath them, waking from its slumber. Seren slid into the pilot's seat, her fingers dancing across the controls with practiced precision. Ethan dropped into the co-pilot's chair, his heart hammering. Outside the viewport, 3 sleek interceptors peeled away from the station, their weapons glowing hot. Seren's voice cut through the chaos. "Strap in." The Stormbringer roared to life, and Ethan realized, too late, that he hadn't just bought a ship. He'd bought a war. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs as Seren's words sliced through the chaos. "Bounty hunters. They're here." His fingers tightened around the edge of the console. "What do you need me to do?" Seren didn't look at him, her gaze was locked on the ship's flickering startup sequence. "Help me fly this thing," she snapped, her voice sharp with command. One hand flew across the controls, the other hovered near the thruster lever, knuckles white. "Unless you'd rather die in the hangar." Ethan swallowed hard and lunged into the co-pilot's seat just as the Stormbringer's engines roared to life. The ship shuddered beneath them, a beast waking from slumber. Outside the viewport, the hangar's floodlights bled into streaks of gold as Seren punched the thrusters. G-forces slammed Ethan into his seat. The station vanished behind them, replaced by the cold sprawl of space. "Monitor the rear sensors," Seren ordered, her voice clipped. "Tell me the second they lock onto us." Ethan's hands scrambled over the unfamiliar console. The display flickered, 3 red blips, closing fast. His stomach lurched. "They're already on us." 2 clicks out and gaining. Seren's lips curled. Of course they are. The Stormbringer banked hard, throwing Ethan against his harness. His shoulder slammed into the bulkhead, pain flaring, but he kept his eyes glued to the sensors. The lead hunter ship was sleek, predatory, its weapon ports glowed orange as it powered up. Incoming! Ethan barked. Seren yanked the controls. The ship rolled violently, and a plasma bolt seared past the viewport, close enough to scorch the hull. Alarms shrieked. Shields at 60%, Ethan read off, pulse roaring in his ears. Not good enough. Seren's fingers danced across the NAV computer. A holographic map flared between them, a jagged asteroid belt loomed ahead, its debris field a swirling graveyard of rock and ice. Hold onto your stomach. Ethan barely had time to brace before the Stormbringer plunged into the chaos. Asteroids hurtled past, some as big as cities, others no larger than his fist. Seren wove through them with terrifying precision, the ship's engines screaming in protest. Ethan's vision blurred at the edges, but he forced himself to focus on the sensors. They're still on us, one's breaking off, but the other two are matching our trajectory. Seren didn't answer. Her jaw was set, her silver eyes reflecting the strobing hazard lights. The ship juked left, skimming so close to a tumbling boulder that Ethan could see the fractures in its surface. You're insane, he breathed. A ghost of a smirk touched her lips. Told you. Another plasma blast rocked the ship. The console spat sparks. Ethan coughed against the acrid smoke. Shields at 30%. We can't take another hit like that. Seren's hand shot out, gripping his forearm. Her touch was startling, warm and rough with calluses. Reroute auxiliary power to the rear deflectors. Now. Ethan didn't hesitate. His fingers flew over the controls, diverting energy from non-essential systems. The shields flared blue just as the hunters fired again. The impact rattled his teeth, but the barrier held. Seren exhaled sharply. Good. Now. A proximity alarm screeched. Ethan's head snapped up. The largest asteroid yet loomed ahead, its pocked surface filling the viewport. Seren. She didn't flinch. At the last second, she killed the thrusters and fired the lateral stabilizers. The Stormbringer slid sideways, scraping along the asteroid's edge in a shower of sparks. Behind them, one hunter ship wasn't so lucky. It clipped the rock and spun out, its hull crumpling like paper. The second ship veered away, but not before Seren unleashed a volley of chaff mines. The explosives detonated in a blinding flash. When the glare faded, the hunters were gone. Silence. Ethan sagged in his seat, his breath coming in ragged gulps. The Stormbringer drifted, its engines humming softly. Outside, the stars burned steady and indifferent. We lost them, he muttered, half in disbelief. Seren leaned back, rolling the tension from her shoulders. For now. She shot him a sidelong glance. You didn't panic. I'm impressed. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. Yeah, well, fake it till you make it. A real smile this time, small, but there. You'll need that attitude where we're going. He frowned. Where are we going? Seren tapped the NAV computer. A star chart expanded, highlighting a sector deep in uncharted space. Somewhere they won't follow. Her voice dropped. And where you'll get answers about what you really bought. Ethan studied her, the way the dim light traced the curve of her neck, the quiet ferocity in her posture. This wasn't just a ship. It was a key, a weapon, a destiny. And Seren? She was all three. He exhaled. Guess I'm in. Her eyes gleamed. Guess you are. The ship glided silently through the void, the distant stars casting faint light against the endless dark. In the quiet aftermath of their shared moment, Seren and Ethan found themselves pulled back into the urgency of their situation. The ship hummed around them, its secrets buried deep within its steel bones. Ethan stood at the console, fingers dancing over the controls as he scanned the ship's systems. Seren leaned beside him, her silver eyes reflecting the flickering data streams. The air between them had shifted, no longer just allies, but something more. Something unspoken. We need to figure out what this ship is hiding, Ethan muttered, his brow furrowing as he sifted through encrypted logs. Bounty hunters don't chase ghosts. There's something here worth killing for. Seren crossed her arms, her gaze distant. If it's valuable enough to send hunters after us, it's valuable enough to use as leverage. She turned to him, a spark of determination in her eyes. "We find it first." Ethan smirked. "You always this optimistic?" "No," she admitted. "But I don't like being hunted." A sudden alert flashed across the console, cutting through their banter. Ethan's pulse jumped as he read the message. "Incoming transmission." Seren was already working to decrypt it, her fingers swift and precise. The comm crackled to life, a distorted voice slicing through the silence. "Seren Vallis. Ethan Carter. You've taken something that doesn't belong to you." Ethan's grip tightened on the console. "Who is this?" The voice ignored him. "The cargo you carry is ours. Hand it over, and you might walk away with your lives." Seren's lips curled into a cold smile. "Generous offer. But we don't negotiate with faceless threats." A pause. Then, the voice darkened. "You'll regret that." The transmission cut out, leaving only static. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Well, that could have gone better." Seren was already moving. "They'll be coming. We need to find it first." Their search led them deep into the ship's underbelly, past dim corridors and sealed compartments. The storage bay loomed ahead, a cavernous space stacked with crates and discarded tech. Seren moved with purpose, her instincts guiding her past the obvious hiding spots. Ethan kicked open a rusted panel, peering inside. Nothing here but dust and regrets. Seren ran her fingers along the wall, stopping where the metal plating seemed slightly uneven. With a sharp press, a hidden compartment hissed open. Inside sat a small, unmarked box, sleek, ancient, and humming faintly with energy. Ethan whistled. "Well, hello there." Seren carefully lifted it, her fingers tracing the strange engravings along its surface. "This is it," she murmured. "This is what they want." Ethan leaned in. "Any idea what's inside?" She shook her head. "No. But it's old. Older than this ship. Maybe older than the consortium itself." A beat of silence. Then Ethan grinned. "So, we open it?" Seren shot him a look. "Or we wait for a small army to blast their way in and take it from us." Point taken. As her fingers found the latch, the box emitted a soft, eerie glow. The air around them seemed to hum, charged with something unseen. Ethan's smile faded. "You feel that?" Seren's voice was barely a whisper. "Power." The box clicked open, and the ship's alarms screamed to life. Ethan's head snapped toward the sound. "They're here." Seren snapped the box shut, tucking it into her jacket. "Then we move." "No." As they sprinted back toward the cockpit, the ship shuddered under the impact of an external dock. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. Ethan glanced at her as they ran. "You sure you don't know what that thing is?" Seren's jaw clenched. "Not yet. But I intend to find out." The bond between them had solidified, not just trust, but something fiercer. Something unbreakable. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. And if that box held the key to their survival, or their destruction, they'd uncover it on their own terms. The ship drifted through the endless dark, stars flickering like distant candlelight. The box sat between them, an enigma, a threat, a promise. But right now, Ethan wasn't thinking about the box. He was thinking about the way Seren's body had pressed against his in the narrow corridor when they'd run from the last ambush. The way her breath had hitched when his hand brushed the small of her back. The way her silver eyes darkened when she looked at him, like she wanted to devour him whole. Ethan leaned back in the pilot's chair, stretching his arms behind his head. "You know," he drawled, "if we're gonna die chasing this thing, there's one thing I'd regret not doing first." Seren didn't look up from the console, but her lips curved. "Let me guess. Something reckless?" "Oh, absolutely." She finally turned, arching a brow. "You're insufferable." "And yet," he said, rising to his feet, "you haven't shot me yet." He stepped closer, close enough to catch the scent of her, metal and something wild, like a storm on the horizon. Makes a man wonder why. Seren held her ground, but her pulse jumped in her throat. "Maybe I'm saving it for a special occasion." Ethan grinned. "Like right now?" She exhaled sharply, then, fast as a striking viper, grabbed the front of his jacket and yanked him in. Their mouths crashed together, hot and demanding. No hesitation, no sweet exploration, just hunger, raw and untamed. Ethan groaned into the kiss, hands sliding down to grip her hips, pulling her flush against him. Seren bit his lower lip, and he growled, spinning her around and pinning her against the console. That, she breathed, was reckless. You started it. He nipped at her jaw, relishing the way her fingers tangled in his hair. And I'll finish it. She shoved him back just enough to flip their positions, pressing him into the chair as she straddled him. The ship's alarms blared. Ethan cursed. You've got to be kidding me. Seren didn't move. Ignore it. Babe, as much as I'd love to, another alarm. That's a warship on our tail. She let out a frustrated growl, but her eyes burned with promise. Later, she vowed, sliding off him. And you'd better be ready. Ethan smirked, adjusting his jacket. Oh, I'm always ready. As Seren took the controls, her voice dropped to a purr. Good. Because when this is over, I'm taking my time with you. Ethan's blood ran hot, looking forward to it. The warship fired. And just like that, the moment shattered, but the heat between them? That wasn't going anywhere. The warship's plasma cannons lit up the void like a dying star. Ethan barely had time to shout, evasive, before Seren wrenched the Stormbringer into a gut-churning dive. The blast seared past their starboard side, close enough to scorch the hull plating. Alarm screamed. The ship groaned under the strain. Shields at 45%. Ethan barked, fingers flying over the damaged control console. Seren didn't flinch. Hold on. She punched the throttle, slamming them both back into their seats as the Stormbringer banked hard toward a derelict freighter floating in the debris field. The warship's turrets tracked them, relentless. Ethan's eyes darted to the cargo hold feed on his screen, where the mysterious box they'd grabbed from the Blacksite lab pulsed with an eerie, rhythmic light. That thing's active. Seren shot him a sharp glance. How? No idea, but it's not just a data cache, it's transmitting. He pulled up the scan results, his stomach dropping. It's got a homing beacon. That's how they found us. A fresh volley of cannon fire rocked the ship. Sparks erupted from the overhead panels. Seren swore, flipping the Stormbringer into a corkscrew spin. Can you jam it? Ethan was already rerouting power, his hands a blur. Trying, but it's Dominion black code. It's fighting me. He gritted his teeth as the system threw up another firewall. Damn it. The warship loomed larger on the view screen, its angular hull bristling with weapons. A cold voice crackled over the comms. Surrender the asset. This is your only warning. Seren's knuckles whitened around the controls. Not happening. She slammed the Stormbringer into the shadow of the derelict freighter, using its bulk as cover. For a breathless second, they were hidden, but the reprieve wouldn't last. Ethan's screen flickered. The box's encryption was fracturing under his brute force hacks. Files began to spill out, classified schematics, neural maps, strings of genetic code. His blood turned to ice. Seren. His voice was raw. This isn't intel. It's a weapon. She risked a glance at the screen and froze. Project Eclipse. The words glared back at them, alongside footage of test subjects strapped to medical slabs, their eyes vacant as Dominion scientists calibrated implants in their skulls. One file labeled Harmonization Protocol showed a governor of a fringe colony smiling as he ordered his own people into labor camps, just moments after a neural trigger was activated. Seren's breath hissed between her teeth. They're not just controlling people. They're rewriting them. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd heard whispers of this, entire systems going quiet, politicians suddenly reversing decades of policy overnight. Now he knew why. The comms crackled again. Final warning. Power down and prepare to be boarded. Seren's fingers hovered over the weapons array. We can't let them have this. Ethan met her gaze. The unspoken truth hung between them. If this gets out, the Dominion will glass planets to bury it. And yet, we can't destroy it either, he said quietly. A beat. Then Seren's mouth curved, fierce and feral. Then we do the one thing they won't expect. She flipped a switch, and the Stormbringer's cargo bay doors yawned open. The box tumbled into the void, right as the warship locked onto its signal. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the warship's engines flared, veering off pursuit to chase the decoy. Ethan let out a shaky laugh. You're brilliant. Seren didn't smile. We just bought time. They'll realize it's a trick soon enough. She punched in a jump coordinate, her voice low. And when they do, they'll burn the galaxy to find us. The NAV computer beeped. A destination flashed, Calava Prime. A dead world, wiped off the maps. The origin point of Project Eclipse. Ethan exhaled. So we go to ground. Seren's hand brushed his, just for a second. We go to war. The Stormbringer's FTL drive whined to life. Behind them, the warship spun in space, its cannons glowing hot with rage. Too late. The stars blurred. And they were gone.